Hello, hello. Welcome to the shift. Hi, Mindy. We're just bringing
Hey,
Lori on. How we doing?
we are doing great. This is an interactive conversation. So if you are joining us on LinkedIn, there's always a bit of a lag, but go ahead and say hi, where you're from, and look forward to having you as a part of the conversation.
Yes, yes. So, first and foremost, if you're new here, the shift is a space to have real conversations about the messy middle of HR, leadership, and culture. So, we're actually here just to kind of talk about the what are we doing here moments. And I'm Marnie Robbins. I am here with my co host and thought partner, Mindy Honkoop. And together, we're just obsessed with helping HR folk kind of navigate that liminal space and, sometimes that just starts with really good conversations. So today we've got a good conversation ahead of us. We're joined by Laurie Shakur, Fractional Chief People Officer and author of the HR Green Book, a modern roadmap for workplaces that win. Laurie partners with leaders to build workplaces and performance with humanity and people can actually coexist, not just on a website, but in practice. She's also the creator of the Core Advantage Network, Compassion, Optimism, Resilience, and Engagement, which feels very timely right now. Lori brings strategy, candor, and heart to every organization, and I already know that this one is going to be stretching us in the very best way. So, Lori,
Mm.
welcome. We are so glad you're here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
No
Oh.
problem. I'm just trying to figure out how to get this thing to move down, and then we'll Okay, there we go. Hi, it's
Yeah.
so good to see you. So,
Good to
Mindy,
see you.
you and I were just talking about, just everyone brings such a good story and a through line, and especially when they have very strong, good human-centered conviction. So I think just to kick us off, Lori, do you mind telling us a little bit about your through line? Like what got you to having these type of conversations about courageousness and your approach to HR and people and culture
Mhm.
today?
Thank you for that. So, when I think about the beginning of my career, I don't recall ever being instructed or encouraged or coached to even talk about culture. I don't even remember that being a thing.
Nope.
Um, and then suddenly we started measuring it. And then there was a point in time when we all thought we were going to die during the pandemic. And then I think that's when we saw some of our best and most
Mm.
compassionate and empathetic cultures. So for me, it's been an evolution from not having the most critical conversation and recognizing the importance of it to then doing that. And now it's a little quiet. Now there's a lot of confusion around culture. There's a lot of ambiguity in what the best culture could look and should look like. The world of work is changing so rapidly that culture is trying to catch up with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I I mean, it's so well said, Lori. And I mean, it's like, where do you, I mean, that is like, it's because that's so complex and layered, right? There's like so many different ways we could take this conversation. But one of the things that really has stood out in our kind of conversations leading up to us being here was the kind of the woven in untalked about level of courage that's needed to be able to really I would say thrive in this time and how it is something that we need to have as an HR function, and yet
Mm.
so hard to hone and to stand in that voice of courage. Man, I would love to kind of hear how did you get passionate about courage and how is that driving you right now and how is that showing up in your work?
So, all good endings often start with a not so good story.
Mm.
And my conviction to courage really came from supporting some probably not so good leaders. And let me just be clear when I say not so good, they, they didn't have the leadership development training, they didn't have the desire to lead, and they were just in those roles. And so, through those directives to often facilitate unplanned exits, not handle underperformers in a systematic and clear way to even allow turnaround, um, removing development and growth opportunities and not being consistent and equitable across the organization. I began to say, if HR doesn't speak up, who would? Now, I want to be clear, it's scary. For the bulk of my career, I've been a number two. I say that with no shame because all my fearless leaders had to support the board, the executives, and they fought the good fight. But being in the trenches allowed me to, one, build credibility with my leadership, that I wouldn't go rogue, that if I pushed back, they needed to understand that I was doing it for the betterment of not just the company, but for the employees as well. So I've been really lucky, and it's nothing short of that, but to have some really great senior people leaders have my back. Because often these conversations that require courage are real time. There's no opportunity to pause and say, let me get back to you. There's the moment when most of us have to decide, is this the time I know I'm going to get fired, but I've got to say it? Or am I going to be quiet and not speak up? And so, again, I've been really lucky to have leaders that have trusted me throughout my career, that if I pushed back for the greater good, they had my back. They had my back.
Mm.
Um, and that's hard because often I pushed them into corners that made them feel uncomfortable.
Mm.
But in the end, again, I've been lucky. They've supported me, and there was never an instance where that pushback and that courage led to an unfavorable outcome for either the company or the employees involved.
Yeah. What's really resonating with me is that you're in an environment where you felt like you had a voice. And so often we hear in the HR leaders that we have just the honor to work with in the hive, um, they don't feel like they have a voice. And it's interesting. Sometimes it may just be individuals that they don't feel they have a voice with, but often it's the system, which we could say, is that a cultural aspect of the system? Maybe. Other times, like what aspects of this workplace ecosystem, I would say is probably cultural. And like
Mhm.
what has led to HR feeling like they don't have a voice. What wisdom and guidance do you give for those HR leaders?
So again, it's really going to depend on the organization, but move forward and ask for forgiveness later.
Mm,
So I don't want to make it seem as though I've had this utopia where I always had a voice and a seat at the table. Most of the times I didn't. I just didn't. I was often told, shh, stop talking by senior leaders. I was invited out of meetings and not invited the next time because of my voice. And so it's uncomfortable. But again, it's what we're required to do. And I'll give a quick example. If an organization was about to make a very poor financial decision, no one would shush the CFO or the controller. They wouldn't. They may try, but I've worked with some amazing finance leaders. They keep pushing despite the reluctance. Same thing with technology and legal. If the organization is about to do something that would put the company at risk and legal is saying stop, they're going to keep saying stop until they're heard. And it's uncomfortable. I think sometimes in HR, we give up too soon
Mm.
and we don't recognize our
Mm.
power. Again, let me be clear. There have been many conversations where I was hopeful that at the end I still had a job,
mm,
wanted my integrity to guide.
Yep. And I think so. Mindy talks a lot about shame, and we don't like to talk about it in HR because it's kind of one of those words. It's like, no, I don't have shame. We do, and when you said we've been shush, I feel that in
mm,
my bones. I
Mm,
probably have a little post traumatic stress of being shushed when other people in the room weren't being shushed, and so
mhm,
with that comes a little bit of shame, so to speak.
mhm.
And I'm just curious, like how we have, we work with a lot of people who are earlier in their career. So maybe they're in the midst of that or they've experienced it and they're having a hard time. Like at this stage of my career, like I'm pretty self-confident and I can
Mm.
overcome it. But like what are some tips if you're kind of experiencing, that maybe lack of courageousness or getting over things too easily? Any tips for those people who are kind of struggling with that voice?
Oh, absolutely. It's master your craft. The more I learned about every aspect of the HR function, the stronger and more courageous I felt. I'll tell the audience a little secret. Most people don't study the human operating system. Most people don't look at the psychology that's required to work effectively. Most people don't look at change management and sociology in the workplace. So when I began my career, again, all those terms didn't exist. And I had another career before. And so I had to learn. I was lucky enough that I had a rotation program that took me through all the verticals at that time. But in the absence of that now, I joke and say with ChatGPT and Google, I would have been a lawyer, a judge, a doctor, you name it, because there's so much information out there. And let us not forget communities like this, professional organizations. It is so easy today to find a number of great books on the topic of HR and culture and courage and finding mentors, virtual mentors, that there's really no excuse. Oh, I know that sounds very critical, but there's no excuse not to become a master of your craft.
Ugh.
That first and foremost would be my first recommendation. And then see if you could find a mentor. And there's so many out there virtually. I've met an amazing collective, yourselves included, through LinkedIn, never met in person, that can mentor and help. So I think the avenues are available and it takes initiative to grow and build your knowledge base.
I mean, Lori, it's so important. I mean, I think the learning, the continuous learning, and the aspects that you mentioned, just to even take a step back of what to learn. Obviously, there's an aspect of where we need to keep up on policies. The things that we need to be learning is vast. But I think I love that you honed in on some really key topics because it is the human topics that you just mentioned around psychology, the sociology, the change management. And these like three things it is so important, even more now, that these are the things that, if we understand what motivates people about, how our brains are built and how we learn or what does it mean to like even move someone from point A to point B? How do people connect? How do they align? Or in what environments cause them not to, right? And it
Mhm.
decays. And that change management, if man, I think that topic is often talked about, but it's often under the aspect of project management. Could you take a moment just to speak with us a little bit more about this importance of change management?
Oh, absolutely. My prediction is the C suite will now have a change officer.
Mm,
Ooh,
I humbly believe that as a civilization, we've not seen this much change in the workforce since the Industrial Revolution. Now, there's some folks out there that are smarter than me. Maybe I've got this wrong, but everything we know to be true is changing due to AI.
yeah.
And with that change, I think the requirement is to understand that people are scared, they're vulnerable, they're traumatized. There's a lack of trust. And so change management helps with that through the communication, through the active engagement, through the solicitation of input and support through the change. We can help individuals to regain that trust. But change management is essential. And to your point, it's a given in projects, technology, but our biggest change impact now is with people.
yeah, yeah,
Our opportunity to help guide the thinking through the biggest revolution to date is so critical. And I think we're going to see change officers coming forward. And they, if we're smart, will come from the people function. But my guess, they may not because of some of the challenges that we mentioned before regarding
yeah.
courage and just an inability to demonstrate a business case or justification.
Right. Right. I think that's where, we often, one of the things that we come across is time. And for the individuals who are in smaller businesses where they're the HR leader of one, um, how can they find the time to learn? But yet at the same time, how can they not? For the very purposes that you've been talking about. And being able to help them be able to see that the learning is a part of like, how do I just take one thing that I'm doing right now and walk that through the learning that I'm doing? I think often learning is a separate thing and it feels
Mm.
like adding to. But how do we actually take a step back and think about, well, how could I actually input learning into this one thing I'm already working on? Lori, what are your tips for HR leaders to do that? Like, if they were just to do one thing, what is one thing that you suggest to the people you work with?
Get very familiar and comfortable with technology available to you.
Hmm.
So you hear other functions. I'll just say sales. I had worked in my previous role at Session AI with a great head of marketing. He was amazing. He was always at the top of his game on the latest technology around CRM, SDRs, you name it. You could not get anything past him. He knew the technology. Often we don't know the technology enablement that can make our jobs easier. And
Mm.
then you mentioned time. Okay, I'm gonna sound a little bad. I spend way too much time on TikTok, way too much time on social media, just scrolling. I had to challenge myself and say, let me just time it to 15 minutes and spend some time listening to an Audible book, reviewing an article, just forcing myself to learn because we're only going to have more and more demands on us with
Mm.
more and more uncertainty around how to execute those demands.
Yeah.
And so in the absence of mastering, how am I gonna learn? And micro learning is an option. No one's expected to be an expert at everything right now, but it's knowledge and awareness and at least knowing what you don't know and coming up with a plan on how you're gonna bridge that gap.
What I love of what I'm hearing in that is that you went from a place of, and maybe you didn't say this directly, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I'm hearing is you went from a place of where it doesn't feel like I have time, I can't, to actually shifting to, well, what can I control? I actually can control my calendar and how I'm currently spending my time. How am I spending my time? Where can I find room for 15 minutes? And
Oh,
just chunking it down and then iteratively building on that. Would you say that is landing well? Am I hearing that correctly?
oh, absolutely. When I lived in the Bay Area, I had a wonderful commute of 2 hours one way.
Ah,
I listened to podcasts, Audible books. I was always infusing my mind with something as I was going and coming. When I became fully remote, that went away.
Right.
And I couldn't figure it out. It's like, why do I feel like I'm not learning? Well, I was still going on TikTok. And then I told myself, wait a minute, in the absence of the 2 hour commute, I can build in 1 hour now where I do find and listen to my favorite podcasts and where I listen to my books and my research more. I
mm,
cannot overemphasize the beauty in all of the AI tools.
mhm,
You could literally key into your favorite AI. I'd like a micro learning plan to help build an acumen in this particular area. Give me some articles, give me some podcasts, suggest a way that I can do it and do it in 30 days. And within seconds, you'll have a meaningful plan. It's not difficult, but we don't think in terms of that.
mhm.
But it's what's required. It's going to be what's required.
That is so good. Like, what a great tip. And because
Yeah.
to me, I don't have the self discipline or I go through phases, right? Where I'll listen to a podcast for a while that is actually stretching my brain, not just an escape from reality, but to have something intentional and conscientious to say, I'm going to build my skill set, my learning level and it makes it much less overwhelming in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So as far as we get a lot of individuals who come in and they kind of feel the pressure from their leadership team, like they don't have trust in their leadership team. Maybe they've been shushed a little more, but they just that trust has been eroded between them and the leadership team. Is there any hope beyond that, or what do you see that is driving that? How do we combat that?
So, again, luck has a lot to do with it, but I think it's relationship building. We are always one of my, colleagues and friends, Susan, describes bumper car moments. She wrote a great book, Healing at Work. I think we all benefit from that. Um, those bumper car moments are gonna happen in every relationship. If we come into our roles and build solid, foundational, good relationships with not only our leadership, but our partners that we work with, when those bumper car moments happen, we can communicate it, we can own it, and we can move on from it. Often from an HR perspective, and I was a person that did the same thing. I would kind of tippy toe into my role. I didn't own anything. I wanted to make sure I didn't ruffle feathers. I remember my first boss said, I don't know how you're going to be successful. You're just too nice.
Mm,
Well, I was too nice. I was too scared. I was too everything. But I learned over time that building a good relationship, like with anything, when you have those friction points and you can communicate and acknowledge where you misstepped, and or you can communicate and acknowledge where the other person did and that you support them through it, I think you can rebuild trust. I've had some missteps, and my leaders could have lost trust in me, but because I took accountability and because I spoke up and acknowledged and committed to never make the same error or mistake again, we moved past it triumphantly.
mm.
So I think it's like any healthy relationship. You build trust initially, recognize it will be tested, but you continue to work on it. You don't give up on it.
I mean, it's because, I always like say we are messy as humans. And when you start to put two of us, we had put any two people together, it gets really messy pretty quick. But I love what you were just saying because it takes intention, it takes care, it takes around building this meaningful connection with each other, and not letting just one thing break. But we're committed to making this work, knowing that each of us isn't going to be 100% at every moment. And giving us each other the grace and the space for that. I just love that, Lori. And it's so important as we see the need within our workplaces to reinforce our connections. Um, Man, time goes by so fast, but we're in the shift, and we always love to ask our guests, what's one shift you would love to see in the workplace culture?
Oh my, more compassion.
Mm,
As I mentioned before, there was a time when we thought the world was going to end and we cared about each other. Remember check ins? Remember
mm,
Friday afternoon happy hours? Remember the costumes and all the laughter?
yeah.
Well, now we're figuring out our new hybrid way of working, and we go into the office begrudgingly. It's like, ah, I don't have any reason to go into the office. How about just to connect? How about
Yeah.
just to maintain closeness and proximity and mind? So
Mm.
I would like to see a shift back to, if there ever was, I know I did, love going into the office and seeing people or jumping room and just feeling the connection with the people that we work with. And I think that happens through a shared vision. I think that happens through intentional, as you mentioned, Mindy, intentional effort to drive that.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, so good. I could talk to you forever, Lori. Um, I I mean that's like so it is so important. It takes care and compassion, and just like it just reminds me of just humanity.
Mm,
Yep.
Um, I you know, eh, I think for HR leaders right now, there is we're at this like tipping point,
mhm,
and it's and I've seen a lot of injustice, unfortunately, in the workplace for HR leaders that they're trying to step through and be braver. Or those that don't know what that looks like because it's never been modeled for them, Lori. You know,
mhm.
if you want one thing for our HR leaders to be listening to right now, what is your one hope that they would take away from this conversation? What is one step that you would hope that they would be able to take towards being or brave or or whatever that is or whatever that is?
Mm. So I think it's gonna depend on where they are with their career stage. If they're early
Mm,
in their career stage, it's to master your craft, learn your stuff, find a mentor, an ally, someone to help you. If you're at a more mature career stage, it's master your craft and own your voice. Work on building collaborative relationships with your senior leaders. Recognize that trust has eroded, and as the people leader, it's your job to fix that trust, to rebuild that trust.
So good.
Yeah.
Lori, where can people learn more about you, follow you? Because you're definitely someone to follow. Where can they grab your book, which is so good?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I'm so humbled. So I'm on LinkedIn. My website is Laurie Shakur Consulting, and my book is on Amazon.
Mm.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. This has been a very fast half hour, as it usually is when we talk.
Yes.
And so can't wait to chat again soon. And thank you all for attending. Hi, Sharon. So great. Sharon says connections are important, especially in a remote setting too, and intentional and thoughtful moments. And this was
Love
a
them.
very thoughtful moment as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lori.
My pleasure.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.